tell you that there are very few circumstances in which I think it reasonable for you to just take the word of somebody who's telling you something. There are instances where somebody's operating some sort of equipment and wants you to learn how to do likewise, and they've been doing it for a long time, and they might be able to help you to understand how to operate that equipment and can tell you something, for example, that will help that to happen, or somebody's training you how to do a particular thing or whatever. Even in those instances, I really question just how reputable you should assume the source of such things to be. I want to talk today on the idea of considering the source on the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. I'm your host, I'm Kurt, and today is Saturday, the 4th of June of 2022. Welcome to everyone who's here on Rumble, the podcast, YouTube, BitChute, CloudHub, my Facebook page. That would be the Kurt's Religion and Politics page there. Kurt's Religion and Politics.locals.com, mine's minds.com on the Kurt's Religion and Politics group there, on Parler, on Gab, on Twitter, or wherever else you happen to be picking me up today. Subject for today, again, is consider the source. And I have that as a question because I really want to bring something up. You've probably heard the expression used, consider the source. It seems to me a lot of folks don't understand what those using it were intending to convey. The idea does not mean because the source, in my opinion, is suspect, whatever it had to say is equally suspect, or you can ignore it or whatever. Rather, it's fair to say one individual was trying to warn another this person may well give information in which it's difficult to believe. Ensure you verify what's said. The most obvious concern when someone uses this phrase is, what if I already had confirmed the information? More importantly, others are prone to just ignore what's been said as a matter of convenience when they see a caveat like this from someone they actually trust. I saw recently a statement being made when considering someone when considering someone who's often prone to expressing valid information where another individual used the old saw. I'll make it eminently clear. I don't consider, quote, the source in this case to be 100% accurate, even though I find them to be so much of the time. Really, largely accurate much of the time. Let's be honest, though. Is there anybody, even yourself at times, you count to be completely on the money in what he or she puts out there? Because I know I don't. For me, it's a regular practice to make statements, to take the statements of others with a grain of salt. In fact, I expect others to do the same for what I say. I promise I'm not immune to spreading error. I'm just not, and I don't know anybody who is. I admit I do work awfully hard to make sure I don't convey bad information, but the most careful individual will do that regardless. This has a flip side as well. It means that people I don't generally count reliable will periodically say things that are entirely true, correct, and valid. That doesn't mean you don't check them. In fact, can you imagine not doing so when you verify things said by folks you do consider generally accurate? I can't. I certainly can't. I have to say, I think Ronald Reagan got it right. Whether he was the first to say it or not, I can't tell, when he put the idea of trust but verify out there. You need to know, though, when someone attaches the expression consider the source on something someone else has said with absolutely no answer to how what they've said is wrong, you have to understand I'm not going to be likely to even bother to deal with such a comment. Is the person wrong? Tell me how. You can't? So you're willing to summarily disqualify the source without any basis for doing so. You realize that makes you suspect in my eyes, right? Further, it makes it less likely I'm going to worry about your caveat should I see it in the future. Right? Honestly, though, whether you say that or don't, I'm going to at least question the validity of what's being said, even if it comes from someone I generally trust. Okay, that's how that works. And if I'm not willing to find out whether or not the thing said appears to be truthful, you can be sure I'm not going to assume it is either. I may keep it in mind, but I won't typically just count it correct, not even if it supposedly came from, quote, the horse's mouth, end of quote. If you're not going to show me how the source is incorrect, please don't waste your time telling me to consider it. I say things that I believe to be accurate. I make it my business not to lie if I can avoid doing so, and I suggest to just about everybody that they do likewise. That's my attitude about that. That being said, I get stuff wrong. I'm going to just tell you with me right now. Trust but verify. Don't assume everything I'm putting out there is 100% correct. I'm not going to do that for you. I don't care how accurate you seem to be. I'm just not. I'm not doing it. I'm not going to do it for Dinesh D'Souza. I'm not going to do it for Dan Bongino. I'm not going to do it for Thomas Sowell, who's one of the more accurate people, one of the carefulest and more accurate people I've ever heard. I'm still not going to assume he's correct all the time. And let me just tell you, if you ask Dr. Sowell whether or not I should consider him correct all the time, he'd say, of course not. Check what I'm saying for yourself. Go to the data. Go to the statistics. Look at what I'm saying. Listen to what I put out there. See how I express things. Determine whether or not the expression is valid. If it's not valid, maybe you can tell me how it's not so I can put better stuff out there in future. And Dan Bongino, I'm sure, is the same way, and so is Drew Berquist, and so I think to some degree is Dinesh D'Souza. Dinesh and I have philosophical differences, and that's just reality as I get it. Right? But we have differences, and we're going to have differences. That's how that's going to work. Right? So I'm not sitting here saying to you, Dinesh is always right, or I'm always right, or Dan Bongino is always right. And by the same token, I'm not going to tell you that even what's-her-face, the one that Bongino used to refer to as Peppermint Patty, is right all the time either. I'm just doing some adjustments so you can ignore me. Is right all the time either. Jen Psaki or the new press secretary. And certainly not, God help us, certainly not poor old Joe Biden or Kamala Harris. Neither of those is going to get trusted without verification. I promise that. And part of the reason is I hear them to regularly say things that I know to be incorrect. That's very, very common. So please don't think that what I'm doing here is saying, I don't ever find what they're saying to be valid, reasonable, true, or correct. But on the other hand, don't believe that I think any of the people that I pay any kind of mind to is 100% accurate in what they say either. I think they're more accurate as a rule. I think Bongino and Berquist and D'Souza and others are more accurate as a rule. Heck, I have to admit, I even think the Daily Wire folks are more accurate, and I think they're inaccurate about 40% of the time. That's probably a pretty accurate thing to say. I would say that probably 25 to 30% of the time, Berquist, Bongino, D'Souza probably almost 40% of the time. They're inaccurate. They're inaccurate for that percentage of the time. You have to verify what it is that they're saying. If you don't, you're going to believe stuff that just ain't true. Sometimes they're going to say things, and the thing that they're going to say is going to sound perfectly reasonable, totally accurate, and then you're going to look at it and you're going to go, yeah, that does seem that way, but the reality is, even though that seems that way, what they're actually saying maybe isn't as significant as they think it is, and maybe there's some other things that matter a lot more than what they're considering, and maybe, just maybe, other people talking are actually talking about things that are more valid. But when you hear somebody talk about, we had record jobs added, yeah, but that's because you dropped 8 million jobs or whatever it was in the course of the coronavirus pandemic. Of course you picked up the highest number of jobs in recorded history or whatever. And maybe it wasn't the highest in recorded history, but the highest. Of course you did. How could you not? You had bunches and bunches, scads and scads of people who decided working wasn't a good idea. How can you possibly tell me that you weren't going to pick up a whole bunch of folks when folks started working again? Come on now. Let's be reasonable here. So that doesn't mean that that's all that valid, all that important, or whatever. That's not what that means. But this idea of considering the source, my answer to that is I always look at whether or not something's valid, because you just never know when somebody's going to get something dead wrong and stupid. You just never know. And it could be the smartest person you've met, the most intelligent, most able person you know. Okay, this has been the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. I'm your host. I'm Kurt, and today is Saturday, the 4th of June of 2022. It will be very shortly sundown and therefore the end of the Sabbath. For those of you who observe the Sabbath, I hope your Sabbath today has been a good one. Tomorrow will be Sunday, the 5th of June of 2022. That will be the beginning of that Christian week, according to most of us Christian folk, I do believe. Thank you for everyone who's been here on Rumble, on the podcast, on YouTube, on BitChute, on CloudHub, on my Facebook page. That would be the Kurt's Religion and Politics page there. On Kurt's Religion and Politics.locals.com, on MINDSminds.com, on the Kurt's Religion and Politics group there. That will be probably the only place you'll see this today. On Parler, on Gab, on Twitter, or wherever you happen to be seeing or hearing me today. Subject for today has been Consider the Source. And today, or tomorrow, we're going to talk about taking control. And this has to do with what I believe is a sort of an important thing for those people who really are trying to take total control of a society. I really think that there's some things that we need to discuss about that I think some people have said, but I don't think they've necessarily put out there as well as they ought to by this point in time. Hope you're having a good day today. Hope everything is going well for you, and hopefully we will see you on Sunday, the 5th of June of 2022. That's tomorrow's edition of the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. The speaker on this edition of the Daily Summation is Kurt Schubert. This podcast was created on Saturday, the 4th of June of 2022. The Daily Summation is created for Kurt's Religion and Politics. Thanks for watching today's edition of the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. Don't forget to come back tomorrow to check out the next one. Remember, on various platforms, primarily Rumble, YouTube, BitChute, and CloudHub, and the audio podcast, you can subscribe to my content. For the audio podcast, you probably want to use Apple, Google, or Spotify. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or Spotify. In order to find me on those platforms, you can go to the Kurt's Religion and Politics channels on Rumble, YouTube, BitChute, and CloudHub. You can also get to my content on Facebook by finding the Kurt's Religion and Politics page there. MINDS.com, where you will find me at the Kurt's Religion and Politics group, and Kurt's Religion and Politics.locals.com as well. You can look there. I post my daily video on various social media sites, really only about 3, Parler, Gab, and Twitter at present. I am at KP Schubert on each of them, and you can find me under them, and you can find the videos under me. You should be able to find my podcasts on Google and Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It's also on podcasts.kpschubert.com. That's podcasts with an S, .kpschubert.com. If you're looking for me on various of the podcast sites, you probably want to search Kurt's Religion and Politics, not the Daily Summation. Keep in mind, you can subscribe to my content on various places that I put it. All constructive feedback is welcome. You can like, dislike, add a rumble, or give whatever feedback is available on any of the platforms that you can do such things. You can also add a comment on what I put there. Unless you're advertising or doing something that I believe will harm others, I'll leave your comments out there even if I don't agree with or understand them. I will try to let you know I've seen them when possible and may reply if I feel it's reasonable, appropriate, and possible, of course. Thanks again for viewing this edition of the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. Don't forget to come back again for tomorrow's as well.